morning, everybody, and thanks again for stopping in to Braitman Studio. Today we're going to work on, I'm going to demonstrate 3 elements of the painting process, or my painting process. And one that keeps coming up again is color mixing and paint application. So today I'm going to put a second layer on the painting behind me, and I'm working with a secondary palette, which is a version of a secondary palette, which is going to be violet, green, and orange. And I'm going to build a transparent background on top of this that lets this background layer show through. So the first thing I'm going to do is have my full palette laid out in front of me, and this is my mixed black. I have a medium here, which is a liquid plus a little linseed oil added to it, and I shake that up. And then over here I've got some resin gel. This is my full palette right now, and I'm going to make a transparent mid-tone to lay on top of this, and I'm going to do it using a warm palette. So I'm going to start with my transparent yellow oxide, which is this color here, and I'm going to add a little bit of a Baroque red, which is going to give it a little more pop with the sky color, and then I'm going to add a touch of white to lighten this up. And the more white I add, the more opaque the layer becomes. So I'm going to try not to add a lot. And any of the color I put in, I'm going to try to mitigate with a little bit of this is my mixed black with some yellow thrown into it to create kind of an olivey tone. So I'm going to have this and this. I've got a mid-tone orange and a mid-tone and a darker mid-tone orange. And first thing I'm going to do is I normally wouldn't do this, but I'm going to illustrate the line that I'm seeing. In my normal painting process, I would not do this. But there's a tendency, what we want to do is we want to give the illusion that this land mass is receding. And what I'm doing is breaking this into different distances, and I'm letting these distances relate to the verticality of the land mass. So this would be a mass that lets me pull some trees over it. This would be a secondary smaller mass that would let some trees come over it. This would be another mass, and then this would be further back and maybe even further backing it. So I'm breaking it down and giving a sense of shapes that recede. The only thing that seems to be a problem is the height discrepancy here. This should probably continue to drop back, and I'll play with that when I put the sky in. Now my back was to you, but I hope you could hear what was going on. So this is the layout, and now I'm going to start to mass in these colors. This first mass in, I'm using a large number 2 Richardson wash brush, and I'm using enough material so that the paint is more fluid than it normally would be. And I've also got some white mixed up over here to the side and that dark. So I've got different values of that color and that hue mixed in, and I'm going to start with a push stroke and just see the color in its value. And I'm going to ignore that drawing that I did, just sort of because I want it to be darker than the sky. And so I'm really interested in this color relationship first. I'm going to repaint all of this, so it's not going to be seen that much, each of these layers. And so I'm sort of scrubbing this in, and there's a recognition that these colors are going to get darker as they get toward the base. So I'm using my darker tone down there, and lighter as they get toward the top. And so I'm just referencing this, and I'm not going to completely cover up the previous layer. I'm just going to respond to what's happening and start to shape these forms. And I've already run out of the low-hanging fruit here, so I'm going to scrape this back up into a large pile. Use this one more time. And I work very rapidly, and it looks like I'm going back and forth, but I'm really pushing and reloading and pushing and reloading, so I can see what I'm doing rather than just blindly scrubbing it in, because once you've covered up the layer that's underneath, you've lost some of the vibrancy. Now I've run out of paint, and so instead of spreading a little paint too far, and the process of doing that scrubs the color in, I'm going to stop a second and remix my color. And most people hesitate to do this because the color is slightly different, but I appreciate that difference because it allows for natural change and order. As this color is coming this way, you're noticing that the color that I'm putting on top is very similar to the color that's underneath here. So I'm going to have to change this color and value slightly so we can see some of that. And what I'll do is I'll add a little more yellow to it, still keeping it in the orange family, and I'll put a little more white in it as well. And then I'll touch it in to see the value color difference and say, oh, you know, it might be enough. I'm going to probably brighten it just a little bit more. So I'll throw a little more white and yellow and orange into it. And then I'll take a little more of my liquid, my medium. I'll touch it in again. Well, you know, it's a beautiful color. So let's see what happens. It may not be bright enough, but I'll work with that on the fly. So again, this is that number 2 or number 3 Richardson wash brush. And so one of the skills, one of the beauties of this brush is having this beautiful spatula tip. And so the way I maintain that is the constant wiping of that brush so I can scoop the paint up. I have a substantial amount of paint here, and I'll throw the brush over, and again I'll start with a push stroke. And I'm trying to get an interesting relationship of the background color to the foreground, and I'm trying to leave some of the background showing through at each level, and that looks pretty nice. So I'll come back one more time, load the brush up again, and here where it got a little dark, I'm going to lightly come up close and take a look at how thinly and how lightly I'm putting on this paint. And I'm really using the tip of the brush. So I'll locate the paint right on the tip, and I'm going to go very slowly so I'm seeing this push and that loose application of paint rather than pushing it in and getting a tight coverage. So I want to see everything come through.